The Jefferson County Post would like to thank Jefferson County Finance Director Langdon for coming in on a holiday nonetheless to answer a few questions that are of concern to citizens regarding the current budget season. Thank you very much for coming in, Director Potts.
You're welcome, thanks.
This is your first budget season, and you're new to the Finance Director position. Are you finding what you expected as far as our position? Where we actually sit financially? Is it better, worse than you expected coming in?
Well, I didn't have a lot of background when I decided to apply for this position. And so specifically I would say worse. I didn't realize the use of fund balance for the last couple of years was an issue. So that's got us in a hole, I guess, more than I would have anticipated us to be.
You've been meeting, I know you've already started your budgeting season, and so you've been meeting with the county departments for a little while now.
Yes.
All the county departments and the Department of Education. Do you have any idea where you're going to be seeing increases? I know the budget committee is calling for no increases, but obviously there are some things that come up.
Right.
Where you might be seeing some increases this year.
Right now the budgets have come in pretty flat with last year. There are a few increases. The biggest one that's out of their control is healthcare. Right now we're projecting that to be up 7%, which is over $500,000 between schools and county. EMS, for example, needs a new truck or ambulance, but the rest of them are smaller increases at this point.
I know that it's difficult for just the general public to get a grasp on what exactly our financial picture is.
Okay.
In regard to fund balances and that kind of situation. Can you explain kind of where our fund balances sit and where we're going to have shortfalls in this upcoming budget?
I sure can. So fund balances are like our personal savings account. That's our excess cash above operating expenses for the county and the school. There's two main issues right now, and that's in the debt service. That's where we pay off our bonds. That account, in the last 2 years, we've been tapping it for about $1.3 million, and the general fund balance, I believe it was $1.5 million, somewhere in that category that we've been tapping into those. But we've done that for 2 years in a row, and we're to the point now to where we're about to our minimum balances we can be by law. For example, on the general fund balance, is where most of the county stuff comes from. We're down to about $100,000 of excess, so we're about out of available excess there. The schools, a little bit above $800,000 remaining in theirs, and then on the debt service side, $1.9 million. Now, $1.9 million sounds like a lot of money, but we pay about $8 million toward our debt each year, so that's getting pretty low too.
So basically, we're kind of at a critical stage in those fund balances then,
We
you
sure
would
are.
say.
We sure are. We don't have the funds available to do what we've done the last 2 years.
I know that in regard to that, there was kind of what I would call a roundtable meeting recently. It was the Mayor Palmieri, Budget Committee Chairman Scarlett, Finance Committee Chair McGraw, and yourself.
Yes.
And you all were kind of bantering about ideas that might bring in some extra revenue, including some different types of taxes, mineral tax, increasing hotel motel tax. There were several entertainment tax. There were several ideas that were bandied about. In your opinion, and I know that you're just now starting to look at these, do any of these stick out as being more viable to you, and are any of them even something that could help during this budget season that you're working on now?
Well, the mayor, for the most part, is working on those, and some, I believe, are viable. I understand there's a couple of those that we may have passed the deadline, but I'm not exactly sure of that. They can help in the upcoming year. The one item that I talked about that I'm working on that I can tell you specifically about is the capital outlay notes. There's a couple of them out there. One of them is $525,000 for the Davis-Bacon Act that we did a few years ago. It's got a balloon payment coming up next year of a little over $500,000. And I'm working right now to get approval from the state comptroller to level that out for the next 5 years, 5 or 6 years, which will help us by about $400,000 on that debt service number we talked about before. It's almost no interest. It's basically a loan to ourselves. We replenish cash, so I think that one will get approved, and we'll be able to utilize that one to reduce that $3.8 million we're talking about. But I don't know a whole lot about those other ones at this point, and I'm not really the one that's working toward figuring those out.
And a penny this coming year is going to be worth about 114.3 or something like that,
That's
right?
right.
So when you're reducing $400,000, that's almost 4 pennies on a potential of 4 pennies on a property tax rate.
Yes, that's right.
So that's a pretty good lick at one time
It is.
to be able to take out of it. What do you anticipate? I know you're going to have mandated increases besides this deficit that we're riding around with.
Right.
What are you looking at? Going to be the bottom dollar we're going to have to meet our budget for next year?
In terms of taxes?
Well, I mean,
Well-
just in general, what is it going to look like? I know we're 3.8 million, and then
That's
we've
right.
got some mandated increases. What kind of figure are they having to bite down on in order to keep a property tax increase from coming?
Right. Well, I think it's going to be a combination of a lot of things. We're going to have to adjust taxes, and the wheel tax is the first option that's on the table. As you said, the budget committee is trying to have that to be the only increase, or not the only, in place of property taxes. There's lots of discussions right now about cuts in different departments. And one thing I keep talking about is a 1.25% reduction in our expenses across the board would get us $1 million. And so when you look at it as only 1.25%, it doesn't sound as bad as let's cut this department by X amount and this department by X amount. I mean, it's a mindset that we have to change. Just like when I asked my department to start making two-sided copies, I got a few strange looks about what's this about. But now it started them thinking about how can I save a few bucks here and there, and it's going to add up. The small things are going to add up, but it's really a combination of adjusting the taxes, reducing our expenses between those two.
The capital projects fund was just our budget. I'm sorry, was just approved by that portion was just approved by the budget committee, and right now there is no money set aside for the Department of Education, and that was per a motion that was attached to the Building 8 funding.
Yes.
And so any money that might have been used for the Department of Education, I think it was $222,000, that's going to go toward debt service.
Exactly.
Right now they're $800,000 from being basically broke in the Department of Education.
That's correct.
What's going to happen if they come in and they have capital projects needs? Because that's a possibility in the next year, particularly when you look at the sewer situation at Rush Strong, and there's some question marks regarding what that's going to cost. So where will that money come from? What will have to happen for that?
Right. There's we'll have to address that when it comes up. But remember, the reason they moved that $222,000 is because we've just spent capital money of about $52,000 over the last few years for the schools. So I think it kind of made sense that we do that. If the need comes up, we've got 2 or 3 places we'll have to look at, depending on what we do with the budget. The $800,000 you talked about from the schools, they would have to go to county commission and ask for that. We can't touch general fund balance because we're about out there. We do have just a little bit of money left in the fund balance in in debt service. So we might be able to move some money around there, but we'll just have to address those when they come up on an as-needed basis.
What in the last budget cycle, and I'm not sure if they did that in the prior budget cycle, I don't think they did, but in the last budget cycle, they used $750,000 of hospital lease money, and and maybe you can explain a little bit about what that lease money is so people understand.
Okay.
But they used $750,000 of the hospital lease money to balance the budget. What's your recommendation on using that this year? Are they going to have to use it? Where does that stand?
Well, the hospital money is for the lease for the hospital building in Jefferson City. It's approximately $750,000, I believe is the total. And you're right, they have used that to balance the budget. I think half of it went to schools, half of it went to county to balance the budget. we need to get to the point where we're not doing that, because my understanding is that's money to set aside for an industrial park or some kind of proactive type thing in the future. I don't see how we can get away from using it this year based on the 3.8 million deficit we're in right now. But long term, we've got to get to the point to where this comes down. And basically, we're in this situation we're in right now till 2023, and that's when our debt is scheduled to drop off. It's a couple $1 million from 2023 to 2024. So we've got to get through these next few years.
I know that there's a hospital reserve fund as well that had accumulated some money in years past.
Yes.
About right at $4 million, somewhere around there.
That's correct.
And yeah, are those funds available? And do you feel like we should tap into those funds, or are those funds something that we should be hanging on to for an emergency, or what's your opinion on that?
We actually don't have $4 million in there at the moment because we borrowed from it to help pay off part of the high school renovation. But we just closed on our $6.7 million bond, so we'll replenish that fund in the next few days. Take us back to the $4 million. If we use that for this industrial park they're talking about in White Pine, that will deplete that fund. I understand it's around $4 million, and that's what we have. The part that I don't understand is how we're going to be able to develop that property. We're not going to have funds to develop it past the $4 million. Maybe there's something we can do on a loan. They met with TVA and some others the other day, so it's not going to be easy if we use it for
So on that $4 million, do you think that money would better serve us if that was like an emergency type of fund, or is that something that we need until we can get out of this hole that we've kind of dug ourselves into?
Well, Chrissy, really right now it's too early to tell till we get all the ideas on the table about what we're going to do in terms of additional revenues, taxes, cuts, and those type things. So that needs to be part of our picture, of whether we spend that money right now or not. I think we do need to do something to encourage industry to come into this county. Whether or not right now is the time or not, it's just a little too early for me to say.
That was actually going to be one of my questions. Is that I'm sure you're aware that the IDB just recently committed $25,000 in 3-month cycles for over the next 9 months, so a total of $75,000 on, I would say, an option or to hold some property in White Pine,
Right.
that they're hoping to be able to develop. And right now, the way the budget sits right now, can the county commission afford, without taking out another loan? Can we afford to do that? Can we afford to purchase that?
Well, technically we can with this $4 million reserve, and the part I'm concerned about is what do we do with it after we purchase it? We don't have the funds to develop it, at least the way I've seen it so far.
So it's kind of a would we, should we?
Right.
Could we?
Yeah.
Okay. And I appreciate you coming in, but I have to ask this question because this is the question that everybody's been asking me. The budget committee has a commitment. They are trying very hard to meet a goal of no property tax increase. They feel like the wheel tax was enough to put on to people, according to their comments, and
Right.
and they if the wheel tax is going to stand, they feel like they need to work diligently to try not to have a property tax increase.
Yeah.
Can that work? Can they make that happen, in your opinion? What you see going on with the budget, and can they and should they? I guess, in your opinion.
Okay. Can they? Yes. There's no doubt in my mind that they can do that. It's going to be difficult, and there's going to have to be no sacred cows as we go through this. And we can't do it just in taxes, and we can't do it just in cuts. It's got to be a combination of those two. Should we? I believe we should give it our best to do that. We've just spent a lot of money in capital over the last few years, and we have to pay for it in some way. I mean, I sat in the county commission, and I only went to a few before I had this job 4 or 5 years ago, and heard Mike Long explain how much it was going to cost for these building programs. And we have not changed our tax structure to what he said it was going to be, and his number is going to be awful close to being what what we're gonna need, whether it's through property tax or wheel tax. You know, we're gonna have to have more in taxes. I think we can do it if we're willing to make the hard decisions.
I appreciate you coming in. I thank you very much. I know you've got a long few months ahead of you until June, when you present the budget to the full commission. Hopefully get it passed and put to bed by July. And we wish you the best of luck, and thank you very much for taking your time.
Appreciate it, Christy.
Thank you.